We fail to launch because we want to know all of the how before we do it. How is overrated. Just make the decision. If you want to change your world, just make a decision. And forget having to know all the how. The how will come as you start to execute. Most of us fail to execute because we want to know the how before we start. So therefore, we don't start. There are no lightning bolts, no Hail Marys, no magic bullets. What there is just purposeful growth. There's consistency. There's being willing to change your habits. There's being willing to be accountable to other people. And once you've done those things, it's interesting. You begin to become a magnet for opportunity. Opportunity starts to find you instead of you always looking for opportunity. Hi, good afternoon, everybody. We are so excited to bring you the inaugural Atomic Habits course. Shayna, myself, Joe, Michelle, it's really been a team effort.
It has.
Putting it together. And we hope that you all love it. I just want you to know there is more than 300 people that have signed up for this class. We're super happy to bring you just all the things that we have learned, not only from the book, but just taking the book and applying it in our careers and our lives and our businesses. And so we're just super excited about it.
Absolutely. And, the most exciting thing for me about this course, Kristan, is these atomic habits apply not just to business, but to our lives all around. And so when you take these fundamental concepts, not only can they help you improve your business and your productivity, but they can help you improve your life and all of the things most important to you. So I challenge you to work through these concepts with us today, keeping that in mind, that this is really a life class.
It is a life class. And you're right. All these concepts, they really, we might as well get into it, but I just want to say this. What I love about it is, I just said it in the video, there are no lightning bolts, no Hail Marys. It's these little tiny things that we call keystone habits that all of a sudden set the dominoes running.
Right.
Yeah. And so Shayna, what is it that you're super excited about, about them learning in this class today?
So for me, I think it's just learning how easy it is. I think we get overwhelmed by the term habits, overwhelmed by time, overwhelmed by all the things. And for me, when I read this book and it was sitting on my shelf for years and somebody kept saying it. And I went to, buy it and found out I'd already purchased it. So I went and grabbed it and it just came at the right time. And it really, it rang big to me. And I was able to implement the things. And that's what I love about it. I don't like to teach or coach about anything I don't know that I haven't implemented. And it just, changing a habit and or removing a habit is really so simple. Simple.
It is.
Not always easy, very simple. And that's what I love.
We're going to talk about that today. So Peter, give us the lay of the land, how they ask questions, just how we're going to go about today. Housekeeping.
Yeah, definitely. So a couple of things today, just so that the experience goes well for you. I know we're all on Zoom all day, and sometimes it can get a little bit tiring. So I just want to share a couple of things with you to make your learning experience better today. So first, you can find everything you need for class today on our support page. So Tegan will put that link in the chat. It's kristancolenetwork.com/atomic support. I'm fairly sure. It could be a little different, and Tegan will put it in the chat either way, and that's the correct link. Also, I want to go over some Zoom etiquette with you today. First, interact with us. Kristan and Joe are going to feed off your energy, and you're going to feed off their energy. And really, you can work with them to go upwards with your energy, or it can go downwards. I mean, that does happen sometimes. And it's so helpful to us when you ask questions and share ahas. So there are a couple of ways that you can do that. The first is just by putting it in the chat. I do know that sometimes your fingers don't work as quick as your mouth does. And so if you'd like to come off mute, you can do that as well. I suggest you raise your hand because we have quite a few people in class today. So I'm raising my virtual hand, and that will bump you to the top of our view so that we know you have a question or something to share. You can also raise your physical hand, although it may take us just a little longer to see that you want to come off mute and talk. That's just the best way for us to interact with you today. Finally, as far as Zoom etiquette goes, there is a little button in the upper right-hand corner of your screen where you can select your view, and you should use that when we have slides up on screen so that you can have Kristan and Joe on one side and slides on the other. That view is called speaker side by side. Finally, last little piece for you here, and this is really quick. We do have a Facebook group called Real Grit because it takes real grit to succeed in real estate, right? So that's just a group of real estate agents, business owners, and entrepreneurs where we share information with one another and talk about what's going on in the industry and ask questions. And it's a great place to get in touch with us after today's class if you wish to. So that's everything I have for today. Take it away, Joe and Kristan.
Fantastic. So let's get started.
All right, perfect.
So when we wrote this course, we kind of broke it down. And so we're going to kind of tell you what we're going to tell you, and then we're going to go through all the different slides. So what are we going to cover today, Joe?
Yeah, so first and foremost, here's kind of a quick overview. We're going to talk about the fundamentals of habits. What are they? Why do they exist? And how can we be more aware of them? Then we're going to go through 4 very strategic laws of behavioral change. And we have several slides within each of these laws that's going to break down for you the specific actionable steps you can take to either build a new good habit or to stop an existing bad habit. And those are the 2 areas we're going to really focus in today. And then we'll finish up with some advanced tactics.
Sounds good. So I love this, the surprising power of an atomic habit. It's easy to overestimate the importance of one defining moment and underestimate the value of making small improvements daily. The aggregation of marginal gains. And I think people just, when they go to why is the gym full on January 1st and vacant on February 15th? Why is that?
Well, everybody has a New Year's resolution. I'm going to get my butt in there January 1.
Right. And so why by February 14th have so many people, what we found is 92% of the people will not hit their goals this year. And that sounds super sad. None of you, of course, because you're on the call today. But for most people, they don't see change fast enough.
Right.
They don't realize, as we say here, the incremental value of small habits every day are compounding.
Yeah. By human nature, we want to see our progress. And sometimes that progress is very marginal. And so we have to be okay with, number one, that progress taking some time,
right,
and stopping and being aware enough to say, I am making progress. Even if it's little progress, it's forward.
Right. And if you know absolutely the rule of compounding works, then sometimes that will tide you over while you're not seeing the immediate effect until you start actually seeing it. And I think on the next slide or a couple of slides, we're going to show kind of what that looks like. It's like we think the results are going to go straight up, and they don't. They're kind of like, like this for a while.
Stagnant for a while.
Yeah, exactly. And so the difference between what we anticipate and what actually happens, we call it the valley of disappointment.
Tell me about that, Kristan.
It's where it's you're doing all the right things, you give up too soon. And so you get disappointed and you go back around the horn. Well, let me try something different. I know I'm going to try this new diet. Right. And it's the same thing over and over because people don't appreciate that this takes time. And they also don't put the things in place that give them a greater chance of success, which we're going to talk about today.
Absolutely. It reminds me of the photo that you've probably all seen where the guy's mining away and he's just before the diamonds and he decides to quit and give up. It reminds me of that. Yeah. Sometimes you're so close to striking gold, but you don't feel it. So you give up just a moment too soon. And this idea of 1% better every day is really the exact opposite. It's looking at this as this is going to be a progression that I work through really indefinitely. That's what it means to have a growth mindset and
Mhm.
to know that there's no finish line with habits. This is something that,
Right.
as long as we're alive, this is going to be something that we're actively working toward.
Right. And Shana, we talked about this too. It's that a goal is finite. It's really, it is. And so, but growth isn't, right?
Right.
And so it's this mindset around about on compounding. We all understand compounding interest. Compounding habits work exactly the same way. And there's even another cool one we'll talk about later, which is habit stacking.
Yes.
I love that. So let's look at compounding habits. So Sheena, walk us through, both the positive, because a domino effect can go both forward and it can work in reverse. So how do we have positive compounding?
So positive compounding, it says right there, 3 ways: productivity. So the more tasks you handle without thinking, the more your brain is free to focus. So, and as I've taught this and talked about it over the years, or over the last year, I think the most simple example I can have is brushing our teeth. Brushing our teeth every single day is just a habit. And when we started brushing our teeth when we were 2 years old, it looks way different than today. But most of us can brush our teeth now while we're checking our texts or picking out clothes. So the more tasks you handle without thinking, the more your brain is free to focus on other areas. Then there's knowledge. Every book that you read inspires you, teaches you, and opens different ways of thinking about old ideas. So that's being learning based and breaking through plateaus. And then relationships, people reflect the behavior back to you, and we'll talk about that soon. Your habits oftentimes are a result of the people that influence your life. And then negative compounds, some of us learn through what we don't want to do. So stress, common causes of stress are manageable. But when it becomes a habit, stress becomes a habit, it seriously impacts your health. Negative thoughts, once you fall into the habit of seeing people as angry, you start to see those people everywhere. Like it's that RAS in your reticular activating system. And then outrage, a long series of microaggressions and daily aggravations multiply until one event tips the scales. And so that's negative compounding on a habit.
It's so true. It's like the more you see something, the more you see it.
Mm-hmm.
The less you see something, the less you see it.
Right.
It naturally has this compounding effect, and it can work for you or against you. And so some of the tips we want to talk about today is how can you get this compounding working for you with habit stacking and visual cues in order to make that happen.
And how can you get rid of the negative habits? It's not, you can create all the positive habits you want, but if your life and your brain and your day is still full of negative habits, like how do you get rid of those negative ones so that you're, moving further faster?
So tell us about brain building habits. How does our brain do this?
Yeah, I've always been fascinated by the human brain. And I think it's so cool. Just having the awareness sometimes is what we need to unlock our potential. So why do we have habits? Like, why do these exist? Well, if you look at, the thousands of years of evolution that our brains have gone through, we basically needed to find a way to deal with the same problem that we face over and over without having to expend so much energy thinking about it. Shana just mentioned the idea of brushing your teeth. By creating a habit that allows our brain to then focus on other areas. And so that's why we naturally build habits. And we have this natural feedback loop. You may have heard to it sometimes even as PT-FAR, right? Where we try something, we get some sort of feedback, good or bad. We learn from that. And then that enables us then to go and try something different. And depending on the result of that different thing, our brain has new data to interpret, and then we make a new decision moving forward.
Yeah. So what does that progress really look like? What does it look like?
So we talked about, 1% better every day. And this is just a reiteration of breakthrough moments. We hear about these big breakthroughs that people make and we say, geez, I want to have a good breakthrough. Here's what you need to know. They don't just happen overnight. Those are a result of many previous actions being built up over time. That's what leads to big change, not luck, not chance, not timing, but all of the little work you put in every day that leads to the breakthrough.
Yeah. And so why is it sometimes that some habits sometimes appear to make no difference at all until I call it, you get sick and tired of getting sick and tired.
Sure.
Right. So what is it that helps us unlock that new level of performance? Is it just training your brain to do it differently? Is it knowing that, even though you can't see it, that there is a result over time, and just believing in that compounding that helps you get through that threshold? Or what is it, do you think? The plateau, right?
I think definitely, yeah. Excuse me. Sorry, guys. I think it's a combination of those things. And I use the working out and physical fitness as an easy example we can all relate to. And you brought this up, actually, the New Year's resolution. The gym is packed in January. And then by February, you're like, where'd everybody go? Well, let's unpack that a little bit. Going to the gym feels difficult. It stresses your body. It stresses your mind. You're tired after you go to the gym. Building that new habit can sometimes be difficult. And then on top of it, Kristan, I come home, I look in the mirror, and I'm saying, where are the results? I'm still wearing the same pants after 2 days of going to the gym. What's going on here?
2 whole days?
2 whole days.
Wow.
And so we all know fundamentally that the idea of health is fairly simple. Regardless of the diet you ascribe to or the type of physical exercise that's right for you, we all basically know the right health decisions to make and the wrong health decisions to make. It's a matter of sticking with it long enough to see the result.
Is it called putting the fork down?
Putting the fork down, right? Exactly.
So let's show them what that picture of. Go ahead, Shayna.
I was just going to say, what this reminds me of is we've just become a society of instant gratification, right? And we can talk about it in business. It's like, I showed up every day this week. I made all my calls. I crushed it. I followed my calendar. I don't have 20 pending. So this must be wrong. We're just a society of instant gratification instead of celebrating the little tiny wins along the way, like the 1%, the 1%, the 1%. And we never look back to 20 days ago or 50 days ago when we started the 1%. We look at yesterday. And I think that's the biggest challenge.
We know it's 100% true in business, in real estate. Why is it that so many agents, if they're not consistent, have this yo-yo, right? We also know that if you're a brand new agent, never sold real estate before, that there is a natural compounding effect of doing these things every day, that all of a sudden about month 3 and 4, business starts to show up because of the compounding effect of how many times you've contacted them, et cetera. We know it's true. And so getting agents to be patient, it's to do the work and just trust us. I remember somebody saying to me the other day, they had accomplished a really great feat. And I said, oh my gosh, I'm so proud of you. That's so amazing. He said, well, I didn't think I could do it, but you thought I could do it. So while I didn't see anything for a while, my trust and faith was in the fact that you thought I could do it. So I think sometimes, and we'll talk about partnering with other people and how that can be part of success, is that you've got to have somebody else's belief in order to just keep going. Because they said it's true, it must be true.
I like that.
Yeah.
Borrowing somebody else's belief.
Borrowing someone else's belief.
I love that. And so we already talked briefly about the Valley of Disappointment. Here's again the graphic of as far as what you think should happen and the delayed effect of what you're doing actually happening. And if you can survive through that Valley of Disappointment, meaning if you can go to the gym consistently for 2 months, regardless of the results you see, if you can just commit mentally to 2 months, I assure you that by the time 2 months comes, you're going to see the results and feel the difference enough to say, I'd like to keep doing this.
Yeah. And what's fascinating is we all know that if we start going to the gym, we'll feel the effects. We might not see them for a period of time. Well, it works in reverse too. I don't know about you, but sometimes you can be in excellent physical shape and you can go maybe for like a 3-day weekend and not exercise and overeat, but it doesn't quite catch up with you because you get right back in the gym. So it's kind of funny how there's a lagging effect to that as well. So we just have to understand you have to stick with something long enough to break through that valley of disappointment. And it happens in we're using health, but it happens in everything.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All businesses. That's why, 80% of small businesses do not survive the first couple of years. It's the same thing. They don't stick with it long enough to see the breakthrough.
Shayna brought up a great example of prospecting. And going out there for a week and door knocking, you shouldn't expect massive results. If you get some, great, that's fantastic. Consider that a bonus. But going into it, have the mindset, I'm going to do this for 3 to 6 months minimum, to do it enough times to gather enough data to make an informed decision as to whether or not I want to continue this particular lead generation or not. But the point is, you have to realize that I'm not going to see results from this for at least 3 to 6 months.
Well, it's fascinating because we have a great team member in our organization that did start door knocking in October, November. And he said the same thing is, I borrowed your belief to know that it was
Right.
actually going to show up. And is it showing up now for him?
Big time.
Big time.
Big time.
Yeah.
And James Clear is the author of the book Atomic Habits. And I just thought this quote was so important. You do not rise to the level of your goals, rather you fall to the level of your systems.
Amen.
And that's
You
really
could
what
also substitute the word habits.
Yeah, and that's exactly habits or systems, and we're going to dive deep into that today.
Well, because to create even a habit of going to the gym, you need a system. Did you get your clothes out the night before? You know, are you prepared for the next morning so that you can get up and walk out the door? I mean, it is a system that allows you to create that habit.
100%. And so this slide talks about that idea of, yes, we want to set a goal. And yes, it's important to have goals to know where we're going. Once you have that goal, stop thinking about it so much and think about the system that's going to be required to get to that goal. For example, really simple example, my goal is to close 24 houses this year in real estate. Great. Now that that's the goal, what do you have to do every month, week, and day to stay on track with that goal? And here's the beautiful thing. Let's say hypothetically, to hit your goal, you have to be in conversation with at least 10 people every day. The result of those 10 conversations is far less important than having the 10 conversations.
Yes, yes. And we know, MREA, we know that if we put 5 qualified leads into our database a day, that over time, within a specific period of time, you can expect to be a millionaire real estate agent.
That's right.
It's so I like reducing things to simple because I'm a simple girl. And what I can tell you is that I know people think 4 hours of lead generation. Oh my gosh. So I have to make it simple. I'm going to lead generate until I get an appointment. Bam. Right. Just make it simple. What I love about everything we're going to learn today is this is all simple. Really simple in terms of keeping you on track. Simple little cues.
Yeah, and Mar added in the chat box, you don't rise to the occasion, rather you fall to the level of preparedness. So same kind of idea.
100%.
You talk about
I love
preparation
that word
a lot lately.
A lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, because that's the key to winning is being prepared. Super being prepared.
Love it. So I'm going to cover real quick. This is kind of maybe a slide that maybe you weren't expecting, but I think it's an interesting concept that James Clear points out, which is the problem of focusing only on your goals. And what he says is, number one, winners and losers have the same goal. So therefore, the goal by itself cannot be what differentiates between winning and losing. Everybody that shows up to the Olympics is there with the goal of winning the gold medal, but only one person gets it. Number two, he says that achieving a goal is a momentary change. And we touched on that right at the very beginning. Achieving a goal gives you that moment of relief. But then what we really want to be focused on is what was the system that we needed to get those results so that we can then apply that system to the next goal. Because the fact that you're on this call, I already know about you that as soon as you hit your goal, you're on and off to the next one. We're never content and satisfied and not striving for something. So rather focus on the system of executing those activities rather than the numeric number itself.
Well, Michael Phelps talked about that when he came home from the Olympics the first time, because he got out of his system, gave himself a break. He actually got depressed because he hit the goal of the gold medal. Goal was immediately gone. And instead of staying in the system and habits that got him there, he took a break. And he totally got depressed. So I think it's so true that the goal is one thing, but what is the plan beyond the goal? What is the plan to continue in growth? He obviously figured it out, I think with some help, and came back and obviously crushed it again. But I think that was such a great example of, yes, he hit the goal, but what he didn't plan for what was going to happen to him after he hit that goal. And I think that for a lot of us, we're on to the next goal, the next goal, the next goal. And I think really thinking about, well, what did I do that caused that to happen?
Yeah, that's
that reflection.
And that really speaks to problem number 4. And the example is a marathon runner completes the race and then they stop training. And that's exactly what you just outlined with Michael Phelps. And then last one, number 3 on the list there is goals can restrict your happiness if you're so focused on just the goal. Then you're constantly saying, well, I'll be happy once I have X. I'll be happy once I earn a certain income or I have a certain amount of investment properties. But as we just outlined for you, that is a moving target that's going to presumably grow as you succeed.
Right.
So don't put off today's happiness for tomorrow's goal.
This reminds me of a conversation we have a lot of times when we talk about lead gen and people's fear of the phone. And I hate to keep coming back to this, but it really is, for this industry, our biggest challenge. And people will say, I can't make 20 calls a day. And I know that if I want to close this many transactions, I have to make 20 calls a day. And they get super focused on that goal, right? Of 40 transactions and the 20 calls a day. And it's like, okay, just show up and make 1 call a day. Just like, let's forget about the rest. We know you want to close this many transactions. We know you have to contact people and build relationships to do that. So what can you do? What are you comfortable doing? Just show up and do that. If that's 1 call a day, cool. Let's start there.
It's so true, because you're talking about using a muscle that you've never used.
Right. You just have to create the system. Once you create the system, just like MREA, once you create the system, once you look at the model and follow the model, then you can get creative with it, right? So just show up every day, make a phone call. Just show up every day at the gym. And sometimes it's even just, I just need to get up earlier so I can go to the gym. Okay, let's just start with getting up. Let's just start with getting up every day until that's a habit, until getting out of bed at 5 a.m. is a habit. Once that's a habit, we can add on to it. Like, people just get so overwhelmed with the goal.
I remember, Joe, when you talked about wanting to become a reader. Right? What did you start with?
Real life story, 1 page. 1 page. I was never a huge reader growing up, and I decided I want to become a reader. The idea of reading a chapter a night was overwhelming to me. It felt like too much. And we're going to get into some of the science behind what we're saying right now. And so I told Kristan, I said, I had to commit to 1 page a night. And now I read every single night. It feels weird if I don't read. And I enjoy the reading, but I literally started with 1 page a night. And oftentimes, if I was in the mood, I would read 2 or 3 pages.
Sure.
But I was committed to 1. And that takes what? A minute or 2. So there was never an excuse.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's look at the layers of behavioral change. So, and I always say it's an inside out game.
Yeah.
So talk to us about those layers of behavioral change, changing your identity, the process, and then the outcome.
So those really are the 3 layers. And if you were to be based on just the outcome, then you would be starting with what is the outcome, what is the process, and then lastly, what is the identity? And Simon Sinek has a great example on YouTube of the golden circle. And this is exactly the same concept. What we want to do is actually be identity based with our habits, which means we start on the inside of who am I? What is my identity?
Right.
And then once I've decided what I want my identity to be, what is the process to get there? Excuse me. And then what is the outcome? What is the actual result?
And just to give Gary Keller a shout out, he actually wrote about this in Quantum Leap. And he talks about, before you can have an effect on anybody else, you have to decide who you want to become. So he talks about you've got to change on the inside first before you change anything on the outside. And he calls it an inside out. It's an inside out change. And Simon Sinek is saying the same thing. Yes, that's fine. Last line.
Absolutely. So moving right along, we're going to kind of break this into a real, the simplest 2 steps to take. So number 1, decide on the person you want to be. Number 2, and I'm not sure why that's showing number 1, prove it to yourself with small wins every day.
Well, it's like you said, read 1 page.
Read 1 page.
Yeah.
If I decided you
wanted to be a reader.
Yeah. So I want to read out of the book because this is so important, I think. And so right in the book, it says, the goal is not to read a book. The goal is to become a reader. The goal is not to run a marathon. The goal is to become a runner. And then when you run a marathon, you're still a runner, right? You finish the marathon, but you're still a runner. The goal is not to learn an instrument. The goal is to become a musician. And that switching that goal to the identity, for me, that was super impactful in this book. So I wanted to take a minute just to read those. So people can really grasp what that looks like.
Well, it even works in the reverse, changing a bad habit. Let's say you want to quit smoking and someone offers you a cigarette. Instead of saying, no, thank you, I'm trying to quit smoking, you say, I'm not a smoker.
Right.
It's the same concept.
Yep.
It's about, who you're becoming.
Right. Who are you?
Super valuable. I love that.
Yeah.
I'm taking notes myself. I hope you guys are taking notes. I'm over here taking notes. I'm help teaching.
Hey, Joe.
It's always a work in progress.
But I love just making that statement because I think it's so powerful. And I take it all the way back to Russell Shaw. A lot of people from Arizona know who he is. He's a very famous realtor for like 40 years. And I asked him one time on stage at CRS, he made the statement that he quit smoking after 27 years. And I said, wasn't that hard? And he said, no, what was hard was deciding for 27 years. So like you said, you made a decision to become a reader. He made a decision to quit smoking. And so then his statement was, I'm not a smoker. So I just think it's fascinating because when that was such a powerful statement to me when he said it, because I thought, how many times am I deciding for a long time? Just make a decision.
Right. And it speaks to what you talk about, Kristan, which is don't try to figure out the what or the how before you figure out like the who. And we've said this, but the idea is don't allow your brain to talk you out of something that you want because you start thinking about how difficult it's going to be. The purpose of this class is to give you some tools to work through that. First decide, then figure out the how, because your brain by design is going to figure out the answer.
It does. It just does. So make a decision.
Yeah.
And also listening to what you say to yourself, the converse of that, instead of I want to run a marathon, I'm an athlete. The converse of that, when we're telling ourselves, I'm not a morning person, I'm horrible at directions, I'm always late, I eat horrible. Like those are the things that we say to ourselves, and words matter. Those words reflect the habits that we build in our life because we tell ourselves that's who we are. That is our identity.
Yeah, Anthony had a great addition in the chat box. He said, he's quoting somebody, I believe, when I put the man together, the whole world fell into place. And so again, starting from the inside and working out. Thank you for that addition, Anthony. And we love input. Even if you don't have a question, if you have a thought or an idea, throw it in the chat box. We'll read it. This is a conversation.
So let's look at some of the science. Because there is science that proves doing certain things increases your success rate. So talk to us about what are those 4 steps of building a habit?
Well, if I'm taking notes, this is definitely a visual that I'm writing down because this really clicked for me when I saw it. It's the process of habits. And so everything starts with a cue and then it moves into craving, response, reward. And so let's unpack what each of those things is just a little bit. What is a cue? I'd be curious to see in the chat box, in fact, what are some of the cues that trigger your cravings in your environment? And so that's, obviously by definition, that's what a cue is. It triggers the craving. So that could be something that you see, that you smell. It could be something that you hear, right? Any of your senses really could trigger a cue.
Well, you bring up a good point, but remember we have 5 senses, right?
Right.
But do you realize your eyes have 11 million sensory responders in your eyes? So your eyes have a much higher ability to cue you than anything else. Than your hearing, than your smell, than your touch. It's like your eyes, the sensory is in your eyes. And so a lot of times people use visual cues, and visual cues can work both ways.
Right.
Like if I am wanting to maintain a certain weight, it would probably be a super bad idea if I love chips to have a bowl of chips sitting on my counter all the time.
Right.
Right.
Because my craving is constantly going to be triggered by the cue. By the
cue. It's the same way when I wanted to also run a marathon, and I was a runner in high school, but then wasn't a runner for a while. So I wanted to become a runner again, and so I had visual cues in my bathroom, on my mirror of exactly what I wanted to become, and it works so many different ways. And what I want people to see is cues can be negative or they can be positive.
Right. Molly said in the chat box, one of the cues that she experiences is, of course, the smell of bacon. Right. And what is the natural craving? That's a great example because we can all relate to it. The immediate craving, assuming you eat bacon, is, geez, I really want to eat some bacon. So that's a really prime, simple example of those cues trigger a certain feeling, a craving inside of us that we then act on, which is, of course, the response.
What popped into my mind when this screen came up, and not every time I study this, but when this screen came up, is walking by a shoe store.
Walking what?
Walking by a shoe store, right? If you love
interesting.
shoes, like walking by a shoe store. I'm probably not going to keep it's that, but it's those little things, smelling bacon, seeing chips on the counter, seeing
Marsh.
positive reinforcement.
Marcia said time and location, and that is 100% true. And that's matter of fact, I think that's in our presentation. Time and location are the two most powerful. Shayna, you just gave an example. Location. If I'm walking by a shoe store, based on my geographic proximity, I'm cued by that event. Also time. So when my alarm clock goes off in the morning, I begin to execute my daily morning routine, my habits, right? So different times of the day trigger different responses in us.
In different times, if we're focusing on a healthy lifestyle and our nutrition, we're way stronger in the morning. Those cues we're way stronger in the morning to overcome those cues and cravings than we are in the evening.
Yeah, we've got a few other inputs in the chat box, and I'd love to just rattle these off because I think we have a lot of good examples. Peter said being around certain people can be a cue and create a craving. Absolutely. Mars said anchors, set up with oils or thoughts of certain behaviors. So anchors is the idea. There's also absent cues. Absolutely. And then we have some more food analogies. So perfect. As you can see, there's a variety of different cues that could trigger a craving. And this is the process, guys, that happens internally every single time, whether you realize it or not.
And timing and location and accountability, just environment is huge. There was a study on Vietnam veterans who came back from Vietnam, and the ones that were over there was 35% of our military population was addicted to heroin during Vietnam. Why? Because everyone around them was doing it. It was super easy to get, and nobody thought a thing of it. But all of a sudden, when they came back to the United States, different location where it wasn't around you, it was no one was doing it, and it wasn't easily accessible. 95% of them quit. Yeah. Never did it again.
Right.
So that you're just who you're around, your environment, your location. So just by changing location, I bet if they visited Vietnam again, I bet you it would cue them.
Right.
It's just fascinating.
It totally would. Yeah.
How interesting this is.
And oftentimes it's even a subconscious cue, right? Or craving rather. We don't even necessarily realize it's happening, but all of a sudden we're responding to seek the reward of that craving.
It's fascinating. I love it.
So let's give a couple quick examples. And I love these because they build on top of each other. So stick with me here for just a second. One example of a cue would be my phone buzzes. The craving is naturally, I want to see what the phone message says. I want to know what the notification was. So the response is I grab my phone and I read the message. The reward is you get a satisfied feeling because you got to read the message. Now, regardless of what the message says, that's not the point. It's the response to the craving based on the phone dinging.
Mm-hmm. Have you ever been in a meeting and your watch buzzes and it takes everything in you to not look at it. You want to see it so bad.
So bad.
And when you read it, it's something ridiculous, like don't forget to pick up the milk on the way home.
Right.
And you're like, I so didn't have to see that. But yet it takes everything in you to not look at your watch.
And you literally stop focusing and being present with where you are because your craving is so strong to see the message that you know isn't important.
Exactly. Isn't that nuts? It's so true though.
And inevitably somebody asks you a question, like at that moment when you inevitably somebody asks you a question and you're not focused.
It's so true.
So now let's tie this to, let's take this concept one step deeper. So you hit a stumbling block on a project at work. You're having a challenge. The craving is I feel stuck, so I want to relieve some frustration. That's the craving. So your response is you pull out your phone and you check your social media. You want to just get away for a moment, right? And then the reward in that case is you've satisfied your craving of feeling relieved because you're no longer focused on the project at work. And so you can see how we take certain actions as a direct result of the way we're feeling or the environment we're in at the moment.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And how quickly those bad habits are formed, like I'm going to lose focus to get on social media because I'm a little frustrated. Those habits form so quickly.
I want to feel better, so I'm going to get up and get a snack.
Right.
I'm at work and I'm frustrated. I'm going to get up and get a snack.
And why do those habits stack so negatively so quickly? And I've got it underlined right here because
instant gratification.
You start to assimilate checking your social media account with every time I feel stalled at work, I'm going to check social media. What does that do to your productivity? Now you're on social media all day long. And so then you have worse results. You feel more stuck. You check your phone more often to get a sense of relief, and you're less productive. So it's a vicious negative cycle or a very positive one.
Exactly. So it works both ways.
I'm getting jazzed up. I don't know if you guys can tell, but I'm getting energized.
I can tell.
I'm getting passionate
Okay.
over here.
I was wondering where Joe was.
How do we create a good habit?
Let's talk about it. Please, Kristan.
Yeah, it's the same things. So number one, the cue, make it obvious. So for me, that means visual. I'm a visual person. I like to see it because if I see, like, for instance, running a marathon, I put a picture of Prefontaine up there. And he was a amazing runner from Oregon. And so for me, he was like an incredible athlete. So I put a picture up there of what I want.
Yep.
And I make it attractive. Obviously, if you've ever seen Steve Prefontaine, he was kind of a handsome guy. I make it easy, meaning make whatever your response is, make it easy on yourself. Being prepared makes it easy. And then you get the reward, make it satisfying. And you do exactly the same. And we'll look about that in a second with a bad habit. But Shayna, give us another example of how you can make it obvious, make it attractive, make it easy, make it satisfying. Some habit that you have used this very same system with and it's worked.
I'm glad you asked because I was just thinking of a great one. So making a habit obvious for me, you're a visual person. For me, it's the promise I make to someone. So for me, it's making it obvious, which means I've told someone, I've written it down. I've told someone I have a goal and I've told someone about it, and then making it attractive. Like putting somewhere that it's a constant reminder to me why I want that, not what I want. It's not what I want, but it's why I want it and what's going to happen. And then making it easy. And this is where the magic comes, defining that 20%. But then once you get to that 20%, what's the 20% of that and the 20% of that today? Like when I sit down every week and know that I have to answer to somebody because I told them I had a goal, what's the easiest thing I can do on Monday to get there? And then make it satisfying, tracking your results. Like our biggest challenge yet, how do you measure that 1%, 1%, 1% to get through the valley of disappointment? You track it. You track it every day. So
I remember someone telling me one time that, they wanted to get healthier. And so the first thing they started doing was they would lay their clothes out at night. And sometimes that didn't work. So you know what they did? They actually put their gym clothes on and slept in their gym clothes.
Amen.
So
yes.
all they had to do was get out
That wasn't
of bed.
me, and
Talk
it's
about making
brilliant.
it obvious.
Yeah, make it obvious, make it easy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the, just another quick couple examples. If you want to become a reader, what I did was I put my book beside my nightstand. I could not go to sleep at night without seeing visually the book. So I made it so obvious it was hard to miss. If you want to lift more weights, put them in the middle of your living room. Every day you come home, you can't miss them. Make it so blaringly obvious in your environment that you can't not trigger your own cue. You're basically just setting up your environment for your own success.
And we're going to get into this a lot on habit stacking, but if you want to journal, put it underneath the TV remote. So that every time you go to turn on the TV, you remember, I really want to write my journal.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just easy, obvious, and satisfying. And satisfying really just comes from tracking. I just think you have to track because you're just doing small little things and it's easy to lose sight of your progress. And so just figure out.
We have a great
set a goal to track it.
Making it trackable. Don Aldridge in our office, I can't remember how many days in a row now he has ridden his bike, but it's like I think he's on his 4th year.
Yeah, he just broke his 3rd year of working out every single day. Holidays, sickness, weekends. He has successfully done some physical activity every day for over 3 years.
Which is amazing.
Which is like a lot of days. Like I think his post recently was 1,000 days.
Yeah.
Which makes sense now that I'm thinking about it.
So it didn't matter whether he's on vacation, visiting family. Even right now, I think he has a torn Achilles tendon. So he's riding his bike with one leg. That's commitment.
Obviously, breaking a bad habit is all the exact opposite. Make it invisible. Make it as unattractive as you can. Make it difficult to access and make it unsatisfying even if you get it.
That one's interesting. I immediately think of something and you guys are going to think, all I think about is food. But, so make it invisible. I don't buy it.
Right.
When people come to my house, they know one thing. Shayna, is there going to be food in the fridge?
No.
No
No, but thank goodness for
condiments,
DoorDash.
right? So make it invisible. Anything that I don't want to eat, I don't buy. Number two, make it unattractive. So if I do buy it, just because sometimes I just want to taste it, I just want like a couple chips. You guys think I'm nuts. If I buy something, I know that if it stays in my house, I'm going to eat it all. My daughter was recently visiting and she had some candy treats for my granddaughter. And I said, you take that with you. Right. But what I'll do is if I just want a couple bites of it and then I got to get it up, I'll pour Clorox on it.
Wow.
Like that makes it pretty unattractive, right?
Yes, sure does.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
Like
and
if you
very
just,
unsatisfying.
yeah, you're certainly not going to dig it. Okay, I'm just being honest. Have you ever had a bag of chips? You're like, I'm not eating those, and you throw them away, and then like 2 hours later, you're digging them out of the trash.
It's happened.
Well,
No.
if you pour Clorox on it, you're not going to eat them.
That's
I guarantee you.
yeah.
So see, there
I
you
like
go. Make it unattractive. Make it difficult. You maybe could dig through and find one little chip, but and unsatisfying, clearly.
Yeah, absolutely. This, for whatever reason, making it difficult. I think of one easy example of if you want to start saving money, let's say it's for an investment property or for, whatever you're saving money for, maybe it's buying a home. One simple way to make it difficult is to put that money in an account that is not in your hometown to where you can't just swing by the bank. Make it difficult, literally, for you to access that money. So the whole time that you're thinking about going and grabbing it, you've made it so difficult that you have the time to process, do I really want to make this decision? And so that's kind of the idea behind making it difficult. Make it almost inaccessible to yourself.
Right.
100%.
And visual cues, if your bad habits lead to the results you don't want, what are the results you don't want? If it's a financial habit, is it driving the same car or driving a new car? So instead of looking at that new car all the time, put the old car that you don't want to drive anymore right in front of you every day. Put if you want to buy a new house, put the apartment that you've been living in front of you every day. It's like, what's the visual cue as well that's going to convince you, I don't want that. I don't want that.
Absolutely. And so now we're going to dive into those 4 laws that we just outlined really sort of in depth and give you some additional information. Before we go on, I'd like to have everybody think of one habit. I want you to think of one habit right now that you want to create, either in your personal life or your business. And I want you to think about that habit as we go through this process. Presumably, a lot of people already know what that is just from the first 40 minutes of this conversation. But I say that because I want you to leave this class and take action. I don't want it just to be another theoretical class that you listen to. I want you to have a plan in another hour and 10 minutes from now on a specific habit that you're going to change based on what we're about to outline.
Dive into making it obvious. So Shayna, talk to us more about obvious, especially since it came up earlier, and time and location. So there's a study that if you read the book, you'll see this study, and it was interesting. There was 3 different groups, kind of like the group that just keep doing what you're doing.
We actually have a slide on this.
Oh, great.
It's coming right up.
All right.
Cut you off, but we have a great representation
Awesome.
of that. Yeah.
Awesome. So how important is awareness, Shayna? Being aware.
Well, I think it's everything. If you're unaware of a habit that you either want to create or a habit that you want to break, you can't make a change. I mean, it's the most important thing. You have to be aware. You have to be aware of it. And we may get to this later, but in case we don't, there's a lot of material. I forget if it's in here later. The most effective way I've seen to coach people through that, as well as myself, is you just start by making a list every day of what you do, and literally what you do. I get out of bed, I brush my teeth, I pet my dog. I like every single thing that you do creates awareness around your habits. And if you do that for 2 or 3 days, it's incredibly eye-opening.
And what you'll find is that you're incredibly habitual about what you do in the morning, whether if you want to change it, you got to become aware of it. But 70% of what you do in the morning and what you do at night is identical every day.
Mm-hmm.
You do the same things. So if you want to, you can change it, but you have to become aware of it first.
Which is why habit stacking, which we'll get to soon, is so incredible. It's such a great tactic because you do the same thing every single day for the most part.
Yeah. Yeah. And so let's talk about that environment. We've already touched on this, but let's dive a little bit more in depth. It says motivation is overrated. And motivation, Gary Keller talks about willpower, and we have a finite amount of willpower every day. And, the example that's easy to understand is we wake up in the morning with a full charge, like the battery cell phone, the cell phone on the battery on the cell phone. And throughout the day, as we make decisions, our willpower inevitably goes down. This is what causes us to go home. And at the end of the day, we finally sit down. And do we have our best habits or our worst habits late at night after a long day? We have our worst habits because our willpower is gone. So rather than hoping for your motivation to survive the day, set up your environment in advance. And we've got bold right in the middle there. If you want to make a habit a big part of your life, you have to make the cue a big part of the environment.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And sprinkling in triggers. We all get triggered, and they can be good triggers or not good triggers. And kind of like when you're trying to change something, like for instance, if you're trying to change, well, they teach this with recovering alcoholics and drug addicts, is that you've got to change your environment. You've got to change your friends in your environment, right? Mm-hmm. It's the same thing here, because those things trigger you. So sprinkling in triggers into your surrounding increases the odds that you'll think about your habit throughout the day. So those triggers become important. Like if I know that at the end of the day, I'm most likely to overeat, then having the right things available so I don't overeat on the wrong things. Or I know triggers, for instance, at work, we have triggers, and I have triggers in my office to trigger me to want to do just one more thing before I leave. Mm-hmm. Why, so I think motivation is overrated because, and they use in the one thing, that the example of the people who are going to let people out on parole. And at the beginning of the day, they're a whole lot more likely to be paroled. But as the day goes on and their motivation, meaning their energy drains, like you don't want to be at the end of the day going before the parole board. It was ridiculous. Like 70% more of the people didn't get paroled at the end of the day versus the beginning.
So interesting.
Isn't it? It just works across everything. So what are the secrets? Tell us the secrets.
All right. Secret to self-control. Instead of summoning a new dose of willpower whenever you want to do the right thing, your energy would be better spent optimizing your environment. And so talk about an empowering concept. Rather than being reactive and hoping for the best, be proactive ahead of time and prepare yourself for success.
Well, and that just speaks to, for instance, if you want to be able to contact your database and have a great lead generation, what do? Like Gary Keller says, you build a bunker, you have your snacks there ready for you. You optimize the environment. So you turn off your email so that you're only you do all the things that optimize that environment for you to just go in and get started. It will minimize the interruptions. You put a sign on your door, you do all these things. And that's exactly what this is talking about. That's how you optimize your environment, because it's not your willpower that's going to save you.
And that example makes me think of, the preparation the night before. Think about, we said make it attractive, right? If it's something you want to do, how attractive is it to come in the morning and have to figure out who am I going to call, and have to figure out where is their contact information, and have to figure out what's going on in their life, versus I walk in at 8 a.m. and I've got my list of prospecting in front of me. I've got the scripts that I prepared the night before that I'm going to brush up on, and I've got my notepad already ready to go and filled out. Think about how much easier that feels and how much more attractive now lead generation has become.
And think about how much better you feel about already being successful in your day. It's like the stacking habits, which is it's the more you can stack habits, the better it makes you feel, right? And when you feel great about it, you want to do more of it.
Yeah, let's talk about habit stacking.
So human behaviors follow a cycle. You often decide that you want to do the next based on what you've just finished doing. The key is to tie your desired behavior into something that you already do each day. So, for instance, you get out of bed, I drink a glass of water, I brush my teeth, I make my bed. It's like stacking those habits on something that you are, like if you already are someone that gets up every day and automatically makes a bed, what would be the next thing that you could decide to do to stack onto that habit that you already have? So maybe it's that, I don't know what it would be in that example, but kind of what I just told you is an order of kind of how I habit stacked my day, getting up, drinking water, making your bed, brushing your teeth, because you already start to feel successful.
Right. Let me ask the audience, what are some things around habit stacking that come to mind in your world? What could you habit stack so that one thing triggers the next? So once, I think Maren in the chat box says, meditate while brushing teeth, stacking one habit onto another. Yeah, exactly. What are some other examples? I want to hear from you guys. How can you take what you want to create as a habit and stack it on top of an existing habit?
Mm-hmm.
Before brushing my teeth, I do 5 squats. That's a perfect example. You're going to brush your teeth every day. That's not going to go away. So the simple way of stacking that with something that you want to do is right before or right after I do my 5 squats.
Mm-hmm.
Now, should the goal be, 5 is too easy, it should be 100. No, 5 is exactly where you should start to build the habit because it's more accessible. Molly says she gratitudes in my daily planner and then put that, the box is moving. I gratitude in my daily planner and then put that energy into my daily plan. I love that.
Mm-hmm.
Exercise, meditation, and eating breakfast all before getting the kids up. So getting ahead of the game. Louis says, gratitude and affirmations while drinking my first cup of coffee. I love that example, Louise. You sit down every day, you want to enjoy your cup of coffee. And so while you're sitting there, you're very intentional about gratitude and affirmations. That's a perfect example of habit stacking. So I challenge you as you think about that habit that you want to create, in order to make it most easy for yourself, think about an existing habit that would be the cue to trigger you doing the new habit you want to build.
So I have a great one that I'll throw out there because so grateful I have a great habit of every Sunday planning my week, like doing review from the previous week and planning my week. And I wanted to have another hour in my week somewhere to work on my business, not in my business, but on my business. So I added it onto that Sunday. And so instead of an hour on Sundays reviewing and planning my week, I have 2 hours on Sunday. And it was super easy just to go, okay, it's another hour, right? It's just a little bit more coffee. It's a little bit more. And that was incredibly easy for me because I'm already in the mindset. I'm already sitting. I'm already doing this. It's a great habit. I actually enjoy it. And it was really easy for me just to stack that extra hour of a different activity in that time.
Yeah, I want to come to Mar in the chat box. You've been very interactive. Mar, would you like to come off of mute and talk about the comment you just made, which is Sunday system for success? I think I have an idea of what you mean, but I'd love to hear your explanation and just expand on that a little bit for us.
Yeah, of course. That's a system I learned from Rock Thomas, and it talks about exactly that. And what he says a lot is failing to plan is planning to fail, which I learned the hard way that it's 100% true. And you mitigate that by setting yourself for success on the Sunday before every week starts. And there's a 7-step process that you can follow and allows you to set everything ready for the week.
Just from a high level, Mar, would you mind giving us maybe a couple of examples of what are some of the activities that you complete on Sunday that set you up for success Monday and throughout your entire week?
Setting up food, meal planning is huge. Setting up my route. If I'm going to go visit a client or go grocery shopping, maybe I can, he calls it chunking. So you chunk different activities into one. So you save time. So instead of going to Costco randomly in a Wednesday night, you go when you're seeing your client, stop there for 30 minutes and keep it moving. Setting up your clothes, everything in your closet ready for the week on Sunday. So it's ready to go Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. You grab it, it takes 1 second, and it's less time that you use thinking about mundane things throughout the week.
I love that last one, the setting your clothes out, because I ascribe to that belief entirely. I don't want to have to use an ounce of willpower at 6 a.m. as to what I'm going to wear that day, because who cares?
I always say you leave your willpower for the hard things. And in the morning when I have the most willpower, I want to use it on things that are incredibly important, not picking out clothes.
Right. Don't even waste even the ounce of willpower it takes.
No, but at night, I have zero willpower. I'm tired, but you know what? I can pick out clothes.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
So true.
I can fold laundry.
Yeah.
But why
chores,
wait?
yeah.
Why waste the morning time when you have so much energy on stuff that's so mundane?
Exactly. And Kristan, here's the study that you referred to.
Mhm.
And I think this is super powerful. Do you want to kind of walk us through what this study found?
Yeah, so it was interesting. And they were asked to track how often the one group was asked to track how often they exercised. And that's all they had to track. And the second group was asked to track how often they exercise and to read material on the benefits of exercise. And as a matter of fact, I think they were given lots of materials,
Yeah.
right? So you're given all this information about the benefits of exercise and all these articles. Interesting. Look at the difference between the results of group number 1 and number 2.
No result.
Having the information didn't move the needle.
Yep.
Right. But number 3 asked to track how often they exercise, read the material and the benefits, and formulating a plan for when and where they would exercise. The results changed dramatically. So when they had a plan for where and when, and also meeting someone there, look at the difference in the results.
Massive.
It's environment, it's location, it's an environment.
And so we've made this, guys, as simple as possible for you. Go ahead and write this down in your notes. This is an example of how you're going to set yourself up for success for creating a new good habit. During the next week, during the day, during the month, whatever it's going to be, the time frame, I will complete blank habit on blank day at blank time and blank location. This is basically the epitome of preparation, because you're figuring out all the details in advance. You're making a decision and a commitment. And then when that daytime location comes, you simply execute. So if anybody wants to share, before we move into the second law of behavioral change, I'd love to hear kind of where we're at so far. Does anybody have an example, a specific habit that they intend to create, and maybe using this outline to share with us what that looks like? Who haven't we heard from today? Lots of participants on the call. Feel free to maybe have one person. Molly, I see your hand raised. Thank you so much for using the hand raise feature. Molly, go ahead and come off mute and tell us what's on your mind.
Sure. My apologies for the noise. I'm standing outside because it's beautiful. However, I love this. I think it's so powerful. So I say during the next week, I will complete tracking my food every day before I eat anything, anytime or anywhere I eat it.
And tracking your food, that probably includes, calories, what's in the food, and you probably are like, oh, okay, I probably have had enough sugar today.
It's literally so simple. It's just the fact that I haven't stacked that habit with something I do in complete conjunction with the habit forming, which is eating. It just struck me today that if I want to track what I eat, I should track it before I eat it.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
I think
I love the aha. And if you can leave here with one aha like Molly just had, then I would consider this to be a success.
mm-hmm,
Right?
mm-hmm.
One breakthrough thought. Marcia in the chat box says to keep a bottle of water and your cell phone away from your bed so that when you wake up in the morning, you get up and then you stay out of bed. So that would be a habit really that you would do the night before
Mm-hmm.
to set yourself up for success the next morning. So I love that example as well.
Mm-hmm.
The second law, make it attractive. So let's talk about specifics. Desire is the engine that drives behavior. Every action taken because of an anticipation that precedes it. That's why also you talked earlier about, the anticipation of the goal it has a lot longer, I can't think of the right word, but you anticipated a whole lot longer than once you receive the goal, that there's not nearly enough, it's over, right?
Right. And an example of that, we use the Olympics or running for a marathon. Think about how much time and effort it takes to prepare for a marathon or to go to the Olympics. The goal being, I want to win the gold medal, is the result, but the desire to get there is what drives a person moving forward for not only days, weeks, and months, but years.
The anticipation.
The anticipation of being on that podium one day.
Yeah, Sheena, you and I were talking about it the other day about how a big part of doing a half marathon or a full marathon or a 10K is we love to go early. And I couldn't even remember the word. What is it? We go and we get to go to that. The expo. Like the anticipation of go to the expo, and buy your finisher shirt or all the new cool running things. To me, the anticipation of getting to go to that is almost as fun as running the marathon.
Right. Right. Now, let me turn this conversation around really quickly. If your conscious conversation is, I anticipate being rejected every time I call somebody, how likely are you to take that action?
Right. Right.
So Shana, what do we do? Obviously we're talking about a lot of different things right now. If that's a thought that goes through my head, geez, I'm nervous. I don't feel like I have value. They're going to reject me. They're going to yell at me. Obviously that's not conducive to taking action. What are your thoughts around that?
So one, I would say, it's about doing the habit, right? It's about creating the muscle. And if that negative reinforcement is going to stop the muscle, that's going to create the anticipation. I call your wins, call your mom, like call your sphere, call the people that love you. Think of a way to come from contribution. Like, what are we saying that could elicit a positive result? Because we just need to get the habit. Everything else, the how it happens, the what we say, all that creativity in the system will happen after we have the habit. So if you have this negative anticipation in your mind of rejection, okay, well, how do we insulate against that? How do we ensure that we're not going to get rejection?
I love what you just said. I'm writing it down and I may reuse that. What do you have to say to elicit a positive result? Mm-hmm. We go into conversations with the idea in our heads of the result is I want to take a listing appointment at the end of this 3-minute phone conversation. Mm-hmm. What if the results that you had going into the phone call is how can I elicit a positive response so that when we hang up the phone, I feel good and they feel good about our interaction together?
Right. How can we make the wins smaller? Not, I want to get a signed listing agreement, but I just don't want this guy to hang up on me.
Or also, I think about
this guy's day better.
I think about anticipation. It's like, I know on average, every 13th person is going to say yes. So I'm excited and I'm anticipating getting to that 13th person. So It kind of helps me over the hump, so to speak.
So let's talk about dopamine. Because dopamine is a natural chemical that exists inside of all of us. And basically, whenever you anticipate an activity will be rewarding, your levels of dopamine will begin to spike in anticipation. Easy example. You find out you're going on vacation next month. You're excited, right? The dopamine coursing through your body and through your brain is spiked because you anticipate, I can't believe next month I'm going to get to go on this wonderful vacation. And so it's super important for us to be aware of what dopamine is and how it plays a very chemical and real role in our decision-making process.
I love that. Connect it to something that you really want. Temptation bundling.
Yeah.
After I do 10 push-ups, I get to check Facebook. I do this one all the time. I have little rewards. Like when I do these things, if I listen to a book on Audible, coming to work this morning and I get all my things done on the way home, I can listen to whatever I want. Yeah. It's kind of like a reward.
Yeah.
And so I do this to myself all the time. When I do these things, then I get to do this. So there's something I really want to do. But I know that it's not a big rock, but it's not just something I enjoy. And so I play games with myself. Okay, you do your 3 big rocks today, then you get to do X.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
It works.
An easy day-to-day example, you get to go eat lunch after you've successfully prospected what your plan was for that day. Mm-hmm. That's the reward.
Mm-hmm. Right. It's a reward. Yeah. My husband, when we run a half marathon, when we run a full marathon, he turns his hat around at midway point. And then at the last mile, he calls it the dessert mile. Makes absolutely no sense to me, but it works for him. So he, the last mile of a marathon is not dessert for me, but he sees it as dessert. So it's just the tricks we play with our brain.
That's so interesting. So when we talk about the seductive pull of social norms, and what this is referring to really is that we tend to adopt habits that are praised in our culture because we have a desire to belong. So, if you look at evolution in our ancestors, we typically belonged in tribes. And so we wanted to be part of that tribe by ascribing to the social norms and the cultural norms within that tribe. And so, just a simple quote to outline it, the lone wolf dies, but the pack survives. And so we have a natural desire to want to belong in the social norms. And I think that's important for us to note. And more specifically, what we're talking about is these 3 groups that we typically emulate, which are the close, the many, and the powerful. So the close are going to be, who are the 5 people you surround yourself by? And that's a conversation we have a lot of times. Who are your closest influencers, either positively or negatively, that you're choosing to spend your time with? The many, this is population as a whole, right? So this is society across our country. And then of course, the powerful, the rich, the powerful, the influencers, right? So the celebrities, we tend to buy into what they say because they come from a position of authority. And so it's important to note that that's oftentimes unconsciously we're ascribing to the beliefs of the close, the many, the powerful.
And I mean, if you think about that, as you were saying that, of course, things are going through my brain. You know, you become the 5 people that you spend the most time with. So if someone asked me the other day, how do you become successful? You go find people who've already done what you want to do and you follow what they did. It's the same type of thing. It's an imitation game. That's the easiest way to achieve what you want to achieve. When I wanted to become a faster runner, I went and found a guy that ran in the Olympics in the 70s, and he came up with a new way of running, which made no sense. And it's called the Galloway method. You run for however many minutes, and then you walk for 1 minute, and it creates less lactic acid in your body. It allows you to run further, faster. I ran the fastest marathon and half marathon I've ever run after I adopted his method, which seems counterintuitive.
Interesting.
You know, that you're actually going to run for 4, walk for 1 minute. And I ended up running much faster than I had ever run. So it's, again, the imitation game. Go find somebody who's done what you want to do and imitate them.
Right. And if you're trying to be successful at real estate, for example, go join a culture who not only has figured out how to be successful, but will not accept anything less. Right. We talk about in our organization, Kristan, grit. Grit is one of our core values that we discuss on a daily basis. If you are a gritty person and if you are going to exceed, you're naturally going to be attracted into this environment. And if you're not, then you're naturally going to be repelled. So find the environment that you want to be in that's going to naturally set yourself up for success.
100%. I always say, if you're sitting next to Gary Keller, would your lead generation change?
Big time.
Big time. So the powerful, the many, I mean, it does matter.
So let's talk about where these cravings come from. We're talking about making it obvious, making it simple and attractive. It's important for us to know that behind every surface level craving that we have, there's a deeper underlying motive. And what I'm referring to here is really our instincts. We're again going back into evolution in our ancestors. We had to develop these instincts as a survival mechanism, and so we still have these as humans. We just need to be aware of them so we don't let them hold us back. So, for example, our natural cravings that exist inside of us, whether we like it or not, is we want to typically conserve energy. We want to obtain food and water. We want to reduce uncertainty. We want to find love and reproduce, and we want to connect and bond with others. And you're probably hearing that list and saying, well, yeah, Joe, that all makes sense. What I want to make as the point is behind every surface level craving, I want to check my Facebook notifications. That's because we want to connect and bond with others. Right. So it's all connected to something a little bit simpler and a little bit deeper inside of us. And so I mention all that because oftentimes what we need to do is find modern day solutions to ancient desires. And so what this slide talks about is there's different ways to address the same underlying motive. For example, if you want to reduce stress, some people reduce stress by smoking cigarettes. Another person, they reduce their stress by going for a run. People do not, or people, well, I'll just read off the slide. Your current habits are not necessarily the best way to solve the problem. They're just the methods you've learned to use. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's almost like if you know the method you've learned. Okay, so you want to solve the problem of you want to be more successful in real estate. Well, you might have to get some new friends. You might have to change the method that you've used. So whatever you have been doing isn't working. So you might have to, that's what John Maxwell says. So if you're not getting the success you want and the people you're hanging around aren't either, you might have to get some new friends. So changing the method and the method being, if you want to be successful, go find the people who've done what you want to do. And it doesn't mean you have to meet them in person,
right?
But read a book, follow them, follow their blog, just find the method that they used to
Right.
be successful.
And I think one of the, when you're talking yourself through these, the question to ask yourself is not what are my habits, what are my systems, but what are my healthy habits? What are my healthy systems? What are my productive and proactive habits? What are my productive and proactive systems? When you put those words in front of them, it triggers a different thought process around what you actually do every day.
Absolutely. And so
Like-
we want to,
like stopping smoking, like you, or getting rid of stress. You can either smoke or you can go for a run, which is healthier and productive.
right. Yeah, absolutely. And that's a great segue, Shanna, into this slide. Exactly. We want to begin to program our brain to enjoy those hard habits. So how do we do that? First of all, make your harder habits more attractive by associating them with a positive experience. So how can you very intentionally associate a hard habit with a positive experience? Well, for example, it says shift from the mindset of have to get to. The example is exercise, and we've been using that a lot today. Most people associate exercise with pain and drained energy. That's how I feel when I leave the gym. How do I change that language so that I can have more success? Today, I get to go on a run to build my endurance and my cardiovascular strength, resulting in more energy throughout the day.
So what I hear you saying is affirmations.
It's an affirmation, and it speaks to our underlying desire to conserve energy. Because right now, today, I'm saying, well, Joe, I need to conserve energy. Going to the gym sounds exhausting. But if I change the language and if I actually execute, anybody that works out knows you have far more energy when you're working out versus when you're not working out.
Right.
So it's just that internal dialogue.
I love this one so much, have to versus get to, and I use it in my life all the time. And now I find myself correcting people and I feel bad kind of, but not really. And it's so like we get to get out of bed every day. There's people that don't. There's people that don't get to eat every day. There's people that don't get to go to work and make lead generation calls. And so when you start to look at it that way and go, I get to do these things. Like I get the freedom to wake up, to breathe, to go to the gym, to eat the right food, to go for a run, to go to an office and make lead generation calls or sit in you get to do those things. When you start to think about it that way, man, it changes the whole outlook of your day.
Absolutely. All right, guys, moving into the third law, making it easy. Make it easy. So let's dive into that one for a little bit. Work slowly, but never backwards. Key to mastering good habits is repetition, not perfection. And so, it says the most effective way of learning is practice in actually getting into it, not just the planning. So obviously, yes, you have to make the plan, but then don't focus all your time on the already existing plan and making it absolutely perfect. Get into the rhythm, meaning you can plan for months what your social media marketing campaign is going to look like, but it's not until you start doing it that you start getting feedback and you start making actual changes. So you spent 3 months building this plan that 2 days into it, you're already pivoting it away from.
Well, we all know people that are getting ready to get ready.
Right.
To get ready. So, just take some action.
Habits formed through repetition is really the point here. And, we talk about how long does it take to build a habit? And there's different mindsets and schools of thoughts around this. But the point of this slide is it's not so much about the time, but the number of times you repeat that habit in the amount of time that we're talking about. Mm-hmm. So 66 days, for example, isn't a magical number because by day 66, you've just all of a sudden made these strides. It's rather every day for 66 days, I'm getting the repetition. So how hard it's going to be to build a habit is going to depend on, how many times you're doing it in that amount of time.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That was huge for me because we all have this magical, golden star on the 66th day on our calendar. And honestly, if there's enough positive feedback, if there's enough dopamine, you can create a habit in 2 weeks. You just have to, it's like Kristan always says, just decide, we'll figure out how. Like the how will come, just decide.
So true.
And we've talked a little bit about this already, but it's so important to mention the law of least effort. By human nature, we take the path of least resistance. Mm-hmm. And so the more energy that's required, the less likely it will be to occur. And so I love this example. It goes back to somebody said in the chat box, brushing teeth, I'm going to have it stack with 5 squats. And I said, I love 5 squats because we can all agree that 5 air squats don't require a tremendous amount of energy. But if I said, I'm going to have it stack brushing teeth with doing 100 squats, when it comes time to do that activity, I may talk myself out of it because I'm thinking I need to conserve energy, but we all could get through 5 squats. So make it so simple that you can't not do it, and focus on the habit building more over than the actual result itself.
And it's kind of like, for me, when I'm kind of reached my done level at the end of the day, but I have this agreement with myself that even when I reach that point, just do one more thing, just one more thing. So before I walk out the door, it might be just make one more phone call, or write one more handwritten note, or say one more word of gratitude to someone in the office. It's just one more thing. So it's because all of us reach it, and I reach it every day. I'm like, okay, I'm done. I am so done. And I'm like, okay. So when I say that, my next habit is one more thing.
Think about the mental toughness that creates in your brain. As you're saying that, it's so, I mean, I'm hearing you, I'm listening to you, and I'm like, that's so true. Like that's exactly how you operate. And the mental toughness that you've created over years of having that mindset allows you to take so much on all at the same time. I mean, so I guess quick sidebar, what I'm really getting to is the habit of having that type of language is actually opening up additional opportunities that will lead to additional successes and fulfillments outside of why you started the habit in the first place.
That's exactly right.
Holy domino effect.
It's so true, because it's that 1% better, that one extra thing. There's a domino effect to it.
Yeah.
And I want to, so since we're talking about Kristan, I'm just going to talk a little more about it. I want to go back to, that habit of that mental toughness, like one more thing. What's just one more thing I can do before I go to bed, before I leave the office, before I leave the house? Like, what's that one more thing I can do until I'm really, really done? Because you hit a wall, right? Everybody that has that kind of grit, I do, you do, Joe does, when we have that kind of grit to just push and push and push, eventually you hit a wall and you are done. You're just done. And we have to go find that time, right? Which is where a lot of these habits are just blown out of the water. Sometimes hard, but we don't take our phone. We don't work out. We maybe don't eat appropriately for 3 days. But then how easy it is to jump back in. Like, you were just out of town and you came back and you were like, man, I need my brain. And the next morning you were on the call and you were like, I'm back. Like, how easy it is. We talked about at the very beginning of class, like when you have those great habits in place for a consistent amount of time, you're going to fall out for a little bit, but they come back so easily.
They do.
So now let's take the law of least effort and tie that back into our energy, our environment, And we talked about why that's so important. We want to obviously prime our environment by organizing it for its intended use to make the next action as easy as possible. So the example, and this comes down to really preparation and environment. If I want to eat breakfast daily, for example, then the night before I put out the skillet, I set out the cooking spray, and everything's on the countertop ready to go, so that when I wake up, eating a healthier breakfast becomes a very easy habit to build.
It is absolutely true.
If you want to stop watching so much TV at night, maybe you get rid of the comfy couch that sucks you in, or maybe you put something to make it less attractive, right? Like take the blanket that you hate the most and drape it right over that couch. Now you're making it less attractive to go sit on the couch. And I know that's kind of a silly example, but it's those tiny, tiny little decisions that are the keystone habits that, what if I actually never watch TV throughout the week? Think about the amount of time I would save in my calendar.
Right.
Or that you would save.
Right. And if it's gone, like if your couch is gone, if your TV is gone, you don't have an option every week.
That's an even better example.
If there's no chips in Kristan's house, she's not eating chips.
Right. Like I listen to a lot of books and a lot of podcasts. So I'm not a TV watcher really at all. However, sometimes I'll turn on the news. Well, right now, the news is not very uplifting. So I literally, when I get out of my car, the first habit is I put my AirPods in. And while I'm doing whatever I'm doing, mindless work, because I'm kind of spent by that time, I listen to books. I listen to podcasts.
Yeah, definitely. This is kind of an interesting visual, and I really love this slide because it basically is giving you a visual representation of, at the end of the day, whether it was a good day or a bad day, is just a combination of a lot of little decisions. And so Tony Robbins, for example, talks about priming your brain for success. And the idea is if I'm going into an environment or into an activity, I can take 2 minutes to get my brain ready for that environment. And so for me, it's in the morning before I even leave my house. And I'm sure that people can relate to this. Have you ever noticed how when you have a really great morning routine and you executed your plan, you leave the house skipping and dancing all the way to work, and you somehow magically have a great day no matter what comes up?
Mm-hmm.
But if you set the plan in place the night before and you don't execute it tomorrow, and then you don't execute the next decision, you start to feel like you're getting behind. And then one bad habit leads to another. And at the end of the day, it's just been an accumulation of really bad situations. So I like to go back to and this is just for me. I make my bed every day. I just won the day before I ever left my bedroom because I got the first activity done. And I already have set myself up for success because even though it's a small activity, that allows me to domino into bigger, better decisions. And worst case scenario, I have a crappy day. I come home and I have a bed that's made.
Mm-hmm. All of
You
that.
remember that you won in the morning. Like the rest of the day was a junk show, but I won.
Yeah, it's so true that it's because winning at small things also creates kind of like that stacking effect throughout the day. For me, my kind of last thing that I do is I think I look at what I'm doing the next day in terms of what are my 3 big rocks that I need to accomplish that day. And then I get up in the morning and I just execute like a fiend to get those things done, and getting them done. It's like, there's nothing, the day can go really wrong and I still feel good about the day because I've got those big rocks done.
So ask yourself, what kind of success do you need to have first thing in the morning? What are the tiny little dominoes that you're going to accomplish that are going to give you forward momentum moving into the rest of the day before you even get to the office? What can those wins be for you? So let's dive into the 2-minute rule. And this is the idea of starting very, very small. Make it so easy that you can't not get it done.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea here, Shana, do you want to touch on this? What the kind of the big concept of what the 2-minute rule is?
Yeah, 2 minutes. So we go back to, just make one phone call, just get out of bed, just get out of bed. So anybody can read, meditate, journal, exercise for 2 minutes. And Joe, when you talked about, I want to be a reader, okay, well, let's not focus on reading the giant book. Let's focus on reading 1 page a day. So you have to, you get to make it simple. You get to pick your habit and just start simple. We'll build from there, but just start simple. And so if you can think in your mind, what is it that I can do for 2 minutes to create this habit? So if you want a meditation habit, which I'm working on, and this is a huge aha for me, I missed this part in the book, like instead of stopping and trying to meditate for 10 minutes, which seemingly is killing me, I can probably do it for 2. So if your rule is I'm starting a new habit, this is what I'm going to do. And I don't get to spend more than 2 minutes doing it. Like it's a game. I don't get to do this for more than 2 minutes today. I don't get to do this for more than 2 minutes today. So I better love it. Right.
Yeah, exactly. And what that eventually evolves into is as you master the art of showing up and doing those 2 minutes, then that becomes basically the ritual at the beginning of a much larger routine. Right. And so the example at the bottom of the page is by doing the same warm-up routine before every workout, you make it easier to get yourself in peak state of performance. So think about an athlete or think about when you go to the gym, you do a quick warm-up and that puts you in peak state to perform at your workout. So it's the same concept of the 2-minute rule. Start small and then build.
And if we talk about business, you talk about it becomes a ritual at the beginning of a larger routine. And so if that larger routine becomes a routine that you keep, if we're talking about business throughout your year, the activities that you do every single day, that time in your calendar, the focus of showing up and doing the activities that move the needle will never change. The way we do them changes. The conversations that I have today as a consultant or a coach are different than the conversations I had when I was listing and selling real estate years ago. The activity on my calendar and the habit to show up every day to do it has never changed. Yeah. Just the way that the activity is done changes. And so when you start to think about the ritual at the beginning becomes a larger routine, understanding that routine likely will never, the way you do the routine will change. The actual routine won't change.
So let's dive into the fourth and final law before we get into some advanced tactics. And the fourth law is to make it satisfying. Whatever the habit is that you want to create needs to be satisfying.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The reward is repeated. Positive motions cultivates habits. What is punished is avoided. Negative emotions destroy habits. And we've said it from the beginning too. And that is that you can have a forward motion domino effect or a backward motion domino effect. It's up to you. So what is rewarded is repeated. And I think everybody gets that. And what we have to avoid is, or let me say this differently. We have to understand that sometimes the reward is in the doing, not waiting for all of a sudden the big rock to show up. It's like part of the reward is doing the habit. Is honestly, it's playing games with yourself, and I get to do this, and so I think it creates a positive emotion for me when I do that self-talk, and it does create a positive emotion for me. Just like when I avoid the things that I don't want to do, like I don't have them visible, I don't do them. Because I want to avoid the negative that comes with it. So what's an example of that? Can you think of some examples, Joe?
Well, what I was thinking of when you were saying that is I was thinking for some reason breaking a bad habit, and I'm thinking negative emotions destroy bad habits. So if I have a habit that I no longer want, how can I create a negative emotion toward that outcome? And for me, one of the things I've learned through coaching is sometimes you have to ask yourself the question, if unchanged, what does this look like in a year from now? And the way to create that negative emotion to break a bad habit is to really get truthful with yourself. If I continue to do this bad habit, whatever that may be, smoking cigarettes, eating bad food, not prospecting, I need to play this out over time. What is the compounding effect of this bad habit? Mm-hmm. And is that getting me what kind of person am I going to be in a year from now if I continue this bad habit? And sometimes you have to have a really, deep and sometimes borderline awkward conversation with yourself about what does this look like in a year from now, 2 years from now? What does this look like for my family in 2 years from now if I continue to have this bad habit? And so associating and making a decision based on what you see for yourself in the future, that it's time to make a decision to break this bad habit.
Yeah.
That's what was going through my head.
When I was thinking, when I was looking at what is rewarded is repeated, I just think I was instantly thinking about my granddaughter who was visiting. And when I would say certain things that she felt like, rewarded what she was doing, I saw her do more of them. And I know that seems silly. It's like, well, duh, but what is rewarded is repeated. So that can be a good or a bad thing. So, who you hang around again matters, because if you're hanging around kids that are rewarding you for doing something bad, it can go in that direction too. So I instantly was thinking about my granddaughter and just rewarding around that and what that looked like when she was being rewarded for what we wanted her to repeat.
And that's a great example, Kristan, of how we can use this information and maybe help a friend.
Mm-hmm.
If you see a friend working on their goal, give them some props, give them a shout out, give them the pat on the back. Great job. I've noticed you've been working out every day. I can tell. I can see it in your energy. I can see it all over you. Good for you. Keep it up. And so you don't have to be the master of habits to compliment other people and to keep helping them move forward as well.
Good point.
Yep.
So Shana touched on this earlier, this idea of instant gratification. And it's good to know that by nature, we typically prioritize more immediate results over delayed results or rewards. So good habits tend to feel worthwhile only after they've provided you with something. Once we can start to see the result, and that encourages us to keep going. And so what we want to do is obviously find a way to track those results and to be aware of that progress as encouragement to keep moving forward.
And what kind of an immediate reward can you give yourself to keep you engaged while you're waiting for the maybe the ultimate reward to show up? So again, I think
Yeah.
it's just setting yourself up for to continue until you see the ultimate reward. Because that's the thing. Our brain doesn't like to have to wait for something.
Mhm.
So how do we create small rewards along the way to keep you engaged in it? It
Mhm.
might be that, hey, after I've worked out for a week, I'm going to buy a new pair of Lululemon shorts.
Right.
Or so small little rewards along the way to keep you engaged.
Yeah, I like that.
And for me, it's like another thing that I would bring up, if you have a goal to close 40 transactions in a year, 50 transactions a year, and we know you have to track your results, and that should give you some reward and following your calendar, but really it's just, can you get one pending a week? Like, can we celebrate one pending a week? Forget about the rest of it. Forget about the rest of it. Can we just celebrate one pending a week? And that is like, yeah, we get a 5-minute celebration. We got one pending a week. When that's the focus, it seems to be so much more attainable for people. So what are your celebrations along the way that reward the habits that create the results that are more immediate than the long-term goal?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And a perfect example of just that is accountability partners. And we talk about this at KW a lot. But what is an accountability partner really doing, and why are they so effective? Because if I know I have to report to Kristan about, every day about this particular activity, that creates an immediate cost or an immediate reward. I either get to say, hey, Kristan, guess what? I succeeded again. No big deal. Pat on the back. Or I have to come to you and say, hey, Kristan, I didn't do what I had committed to. And so you basically create immediacy through accountability partners.
Mm-hmm.
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 And I mean, the second bullet point, we oftentimes are willing to do more for others than we're willing to do for ourselves.
That's true.
I would be more motivated to succeed so that I don't have to tell you that I didn't than I am just to succeed because I want, right? And that's and that works, especially with people with children and with spouses. That's a very real example of how you can create that accountability for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Get into the habit of reporting back to your spouse every day what kind of day you had on a scale of 1 to 10. Do you think that if I come home every day and talk to my spouse about, I'm going to grade myself on a scale of 1 to 10, that I'm going to work harder throughout the day so that I can report a better number at the end of the day?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I thought this was interesting. Knowing that someone else is watching you can be a powerful motivation. We've talked about that. We've used Ben Kenny. We've used Gary Keller. If you knew Gary Keller was watching you lead generate, would your lead generation look different? Absolutely. 100%. So it's interesting. Or even Joe, myself, and Michelle, we're in a smaller office. We hear our conversations. We would know whether we're lollygagging. And so just by virtue of the fact that we're in that small office, there's a higher degree of accountability because we're all sitting there hearing the interactions. We know if you're sitting there checking your Facebook.
Right.
And so it automatically creates a higher level of accountability just because we're in such tight quarters.
Yep, absolutely. Robin said in the chat box, she finds it very difficult to commit to herself. And I think that at some level, we all experience that. So, what I would say, Robin, is who could you commit to instead? Who can you verbalize your intentions to? And what does that look like on a daily, weekly basis?
Let's look at the advanced tactics. What would some of the advanced tactics look like after we've gotten some of these keystone habits moving in our direction? What's that look like? Oh, yeah. We talked about this one the other day.
Good old Goldilocks.
Goldilocks. Yeah. Go ahead, Joe.
I love this slide. I think this is such an eye opener for me. Humans experience peak motivation and performance when working on tasks that are right on the edge of their current abilities. Not too hard, not too easy, just right. And the graph shows that if you're bored in your current position, what do? You find employment elsewhere. You look for something else to do because you're bored. On the other end of the spectrum, if you're so overwhelmed and you're so spread thin that you constantly feel like you're failing or you actually are failing, you get discouraged. You have to find that peak performance that's right on the edge of too difficult, but not so hard that I'm going to get burnt out. Shannon, what are your thoughts around that?
Gosh, it's so right. And we have this conversation all the time, like success is boring and doing the right activities get you into that Goldilocks zone. Like it's just that one, that 1 week of activities. Yeah, I think that's exactly it. When you're overwhelmed, you'll step back and fail. And when you're bored, you'll probably move on. So do you have just enough challenge to get you excited without?
This is Mike.
Mike got a call.
Yeah, and for what it's worth, I don't know that this is something that we necessarily can exactly quantify or plan for in advance. I think this is something that is kind of an evolution that happens. And I say that because it wasn't that long ago, a few months ago even, I had said yes so many times, and my plate was really, really, really full. And it got to the point where I was starting to feel a little stressed out. I was starting to feel like I couldn't keep up. And like I was just trying to keep my head above water. And that was not a fun place to live. So I had to get rid of just a couple of things and just ease back the throttle to get back into the Goldilocks zone, to where I'm still very busy and working hard every day, but not so overwhelmed that I feel like it could all collapse at any moment. So it's very much a give and take as you go through your, business evolution. A little more gas, a little less gas.
And I think that your accountability partner, your coach, whoever it is that you work with, that you're accountable to, that you've told, that's where they come into play. Like when you get to that point where you're about to quit, or that's where they come into play. And if we're looking at advanced tactics, really interrogation of your thought process before you move forward to change a habit or a system.
All right, guys, we've got just 2 or 3 more slides. Then we're going to open it up for conversation. So stick with us here. These last 3 slides, staying focused. That was totally coincidental timing. The greatest threat to our success is not failure, but boredom. So habits become routine and become less interesting. So there's phase 1, which is building the habit and getting really good at it and using all of what we talked about today to build the habit. But then it's also important to note, don't get to the point where that habit becomes boring to you. Find a way to keep it exciting.
And at the same time, people will say to me, Kristan, you're so busy. No, what am I, Shayna?
You are scheduled.
That's right.
And
professionals,
you are scheduled and you are purposeful.
Yeah. And professionals stick to a schedule. A schedule, when you follow a schedule, it does make you feel successful. So you've got to make a decision in advance that you're going to follow your schedule. Shayna mentioned when I came back from a 2-week vacation, which I haven't taken very many of those in my life, and I had truly, truly slowed down and had thinking time. When I came back to work, the first day I said, I don't know where my brain is, Shayna, because when you go from Mach 8 to 2 miles an hour, that's not hard. But when you go from 2 miles an hour and you're trying to enter the atmosphere again, it was difficult. And the one thing that made it easy is all I had to do. And so I told the team the first day I was back, because I couldn't find my brain. All I did was just follow my schedule, just follow my calendar, just do what's in it. And then I knew I would have the success I needed to re-enter the atmosphere, so to speak.
Don said in the chat box, he just had a new affirmation, quote, I am scheduled.
I am scheduled.
I love that.
Yes. There's such power in that. As you guys know, it's my passion. Like self-management and the time you get every day is just my passion, because I know what a difference it makes. And there's true beauty in just waking up every day and following your calendar. Just do what it says. Just do what it says.
Just do what it says.
You'll be fine.
Upside of habits, we can do things without thinking about them. Downside, we stop paying attention to the little efforts. So habits plus deliberate practice equals mastery. So we talked about building habits today, and we've talked about obviously seeking that mastery, keeping that growth mind. So the thing in the middle is that deliberate practice. And so I started this conversation off with pick a habit. And so I want you to be thinking about, after this call today in 15 minutes, what does your deliberate practice of that new habit look like? Don't just leave here and let this be a lesson that you sat through and forgot about. Put this into action and make it so small what you have to put into action, you can't not do it, right? Apply the 2-minute rule. What does deliberate practice look like today and then tomorrow for your new habit?
Absolutely. And I think I was just reflecting on something else, and that is, let's assume that you've commit to lead generation every day instead of committing to 4 hours or, because what I find is my good friend who's in this office with us said this to me. I am going to door knock every day. Now, some days it may only be 10 minutes and some days it may be an hour, but I am committed to that habit no matter what. And so when you say that little extra effort, we were talking about it the other day. There's some things you can do without thinking. I can fold the laundry and talk to my mom on the phone. However, I can also walk the dog and have a coaching call. However, but I'm probably not going to walk like I would walk if I was not on the phone. Just that little extra effort that I'm using because I'm not distracted by anything. So, we know that multitasking is a myth. You can't really multitask. What you do is you're going from one effort to another effort and back, and you lose 28% of your efficiency doing that. I know that if I want to go out and run 5 miles, it's not going to be with the dog and I'm not going to be talking on the phone.
Right.
I can go out and walk and just go for a leisurely walk and do all those things. But it's that little extra effort that doesn't happen when your brain's trying to think about too many things. So that narrowing of your focus really helps.
A real practical example of that is if you are in coaching or training, are you doing it while you're driving down the road? And although you may say, well, Joe, I can multitask, I can drive and listen at the same time, the fact that your consciousness has to deviate onto the road and driving for your safety means that you're not quite paying attention. So as far as deliberate practice goes, are you taking your calls when going 70 miles an hour down the highway? Or are you getting to your office with a pen and paper in front of you saying, I'm ready for this call? That's deliberate practice.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have a few thoughts really for you in summary here. We've taken all of the slides and really chunked it down for you. These are the bullet points that we absolutely want you to remember leaving here today. Your brain processes through cue, craving, response, and reward. This is happening constantly throughout your day, whether you realize it or not. Make good habits obvious, easy, attractive, and satisfying. The exact opposite for bad habits: invisible, unattractive, difficult, unsatisfying. Set your goal, then focus on the system. 1% better every day. Marginal gains lead to big improvements over time. Don't look for that easy overnight success. Environment is far more important than motivation. Set yourself up and set your environment up to make it simple and easy to succeed.
It's funny what I immediately thought about in terms of environment. I can have most of my energy depleted when I get home, but if I walk in the door, I change my clothes, I get a drink of water or something like that, I can immediately get energy back. So it's just by changing, into some comfortable clothes and getting a drink, it's like, okay, I got my energy back.
Right.
Taking off jewelry, like there's just it's a habit. When I get home, take off my jewelry and I change my clothes into something comfortable, I get all my energy back. It's amazing how that happens.
So talking about odd habits and what they do, I do the same thing, get home from work, change my clothes and exhausted, like done, don't want to talk to another person. If I brush my teeth, it's like I just woke up. Like I will brush my teeth at 3:30 in the afternoon if I'm low on energy, because it takes me back and I feel like I just got out of bed. It's
nice.
Wow.
But
I
it's
like
that
that.
habit.
Yeah.
It's a habit,
Wonder if
right?
that'll work for me.
So bring a toothbrush.
I try it. Like it's triggered this, that craving, right? The craving of energy. So the activity is I brush my teeth any time of the day and
Triggers.
you're welcome. I don't know.
So I don't know about you, Kristan, but I really would love to hear from some of the people on this call. We have about 150 people still on this call. Why doesn't somebody come off mute? A few of you, Talk to us. What is one thing that you intend to do and to take action on leaving this call today? What have you learned today that's actionable? I'd love to hear from a few people. Yes, I could hear somebody.
Okay, this is Keith, Las Vegas. So I'm a geek. I love great class so far, or throughout this whole class. And I read Atomic Habits 3 times in the last 2 years, and I really geeked out about it in 2019. One thing I would say is that we sometimes in Keller Williams, I think we always look for the big habit, get bold and everything. So I always found myself headed that way until I read Atomic Habits. And so what I would encourage people to do is use like the 66-day calendar from the One Thing. And instead of looking for like a huge making 20 contacts, like Kristan said, like make sure it's something you want to do every day. Like make one contact for 66 days straight. That way you're missing it. Just like you were talking about when you don't read, like you miss it, like you crave reading. So make sure that instead of looking for these big ones, start with a bunch of small ones and stack winnable habits time after time, and then upgrade those habits over time. And then you'll look back in 2 years, like, I've lost 25 pounds in the last few years. I've had a morning ritual. I do a morning ritual. So my habit stack is my morning ritual. And I like meditate. I do affirmations, do gratitudes. I read like 1 page. That's the same thing, 1 or more pages. So look for those easy wins and be aware. And then I love the 66-day calendar. I have as many that I failed and then I've actually succeeded on. But when you look back and if you, in a year, you complete 4 or 5 of those, like you're becoming so much more disciplined. And so that's what I would share is stop maybe looking for the big wins and start stacking up these little small ones. And, find great books. Like I read the Atomic Habits, MREA, the One Thing in series, because then you kind of know how to form the habit, what habits you should be forming, and then just get to work. So that's what I'd like to share. And then one last thing would be, I'm a runner too. I never was. But if you can't run every day, find a time and a place. So I've actually committed this year to 5K Fridays. So I've ran a 5K for 15 straight weeks. And Friday, that is my one thing actually, is to run a 5K. And it's a time and a place. So be very specific for things you don't want to do daily to make it have a higher level of accountability. And I post every week on social media that I'm going to do it for social accountability. So if you don't want to do it every day, that's fine. Make sure there's a time and a place that you won't move away from. And I know that I'll run at 11 p.m. at night if I have to, just so that I'll complete that and do 53 5Ks this year. So that's all I have to share. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. A lot of really good, valuable comments right there. Thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you.
Anybody else who has an action leaving here today, who has decided and made a commitment moving forward? What's that going to be? What's that going to look like? What's your intentionality leaving here today? Oh, there's a lot of people on this
I
call.
just I can't raise my digital hand, but I'm raising my real hand.
Please go ahead.
So I am teaching a webinar for first-time homeowners to build my pipeline every single month. But I had a hard time carving out the time to practice and to study the market every single day. So the habit I'm committing to, Joe, to answer your question, is to do 5 minutes every day when I check the MLS every single day, when I run my hot sheet every day, so I can attach one habit to the other and prepare for my webinar that I'm teaching every month.
That's
so
perfect,
thank you for that. Great class. Yeah.
Thank you. That's great.
Absolutely. Thank you. And so we have had, real quick, guys, a few questions in the chat box regarding the slides. These were created by the Kristan Cole Network. So if you would like a copy, we can distribute those to you. Go ahead and drop your email right there in the chat box, and we'll make sure that leaving today's call, we will distribute these slides to you. That is, of course, with the commitment that you're going to actually put this concept into action. As you can tell, I am clearly a big fan of taking action. So we will give you the slides if your commitment is to put it into action to improve your life and to improve your business. I see a lot of emails coming into the chat box.
And to improve the lives of the people that you're around, that you can share these habits with. That you can
Right.
share how they can take such small little steps that have that compounding effect.
Absolutely.
So Joe, can I put you on the spot? You're the action guy. What's your commitment?
These,
Ooh.
okay. I will say that one of my challenges has been with COVID, daily exercise. And I've talked to you quite a bit about this, and I've been playing around with the time of day that I've been exercising. And I haven't quite figured out the exact way to make it the most easy, attractive, and obvious. And so I'm actually going to transition back into a morning routine. So my commitment to answer your question, Shayna, is that I'm going to have scheduled and my gym bag packed the night before, starting this Monday morning, to begin again working out 5 days a week in the morning prior to coming into the office.
We heard it, Kristan.
And Shayna, so what's your action item?
Yeah, thank you.
I know. Turnaround's fair play. I'm going to start doing 5 squats while I brush my teeth. I just think that's brilliant. My huge aha today is make it easy, 2 minutes. So I shared I was struggling with this meditation habit I'm trying to form. I'm going to just jump back and start doing 2 minutes. 2-minute meditation every day after I work out. That's all. The working out happens every day. I don't feel right if I don't do it. So 2 minutes of meditation every day. That's all.
Awesome.
And 5 squats while I brush my teeth. Every time.
I like the 5 squats while you brush your teeth too.
I feel like everybody's going to be doing that tonight when they go home. Or at least you're
And
going to think
brushing
about
their
the
teeth
menu.
randomly throughout the day when they get tired. Try it. I'm telling you.
So true. Well, Tegan, if they want more of something like this, remind them again, where can they go find more good content like this? Like next week, Joe, you've taken GSO. You're going to actually teach it with me. GSO is next week, isn't it? Yeah.
And Tegan just put in the chat box, the KristanColeNetwork.com. And right on there, you have a calendar of all of the upcoming classes that Kristan will be teaching, and the date and the time and location and all the Zoom details. You can get registered right there. So we encourage you to steal that link, go ahead and bookmark it, because we update it and we like to have about 2 or 3 months of events built in there at all times. And so check it periodically and see if a class coming up makes sense for you. And if you want some more information about that class or some details, please reach out to any one of us through the email that's provided right there on the website, and we'll get you the details you need.
And the one next week, growth through systems orientation, it's all about how do you create systems and models and accountability and growth and playbooks and to really expand and grow your business. So that's what it's about next week. Really some, and almost, and to after you've created them, actually, how do you automate them as well? So if you guys are interested in that, that's next week. Thank you all for coming today. We've enjoyed it. As you can tell, we're super passionate about this because it is the one thing that all 3 of us would agree. These small incremental habits is what has over time caused our success or lack thereof when we haven't done them. So we're super excited to share it with all of you, and we'll look forward to seeing you on another call.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks so much, everybody.
Thank you. Amazing.